everybody. It is Joy and Scott from Anderson Injury Law, and we are back continuing our series on premise liability. And the last time we talked about what it is, but now this time I want to ask you, how do you know if you have a claim?
It's a good question, and one of the easiest ways is you go talk to a personal injury attorney like myself and ask them their opinion. This is something that is very fact intensive, so especially with premise liability cases, you can't look at it and say, "Hey, my case sounds like uh, Billy Joel over here, and so I have a claim." It is everything is very, very fact intensive. So. Um, Usually you have to start out by looking at what are the damages, and it's a little bit of the tail wagging the dog. But if someone falls, for instance, on ice that shouldn't have been there, but they don't have any injuries, they're just embarrassed and annoyed that they fell, and that usually means they don't have a claim that's worth pursuing. It is a little bit unfortunate, or maybe fortunate, depending on how you look at it. But in our legal system, damages drive a lot of the decisions. And what that means is, to win a case, if someone has, they slip, they fall, they ended up with a bruise, they had to go to an emergency room, but that is the only thing they did, and they made 100% recovery, had no lingering issues. They were, their life was disrupted for a couple of hours, and that was it. They're not going to go spend $10,000 on an expert to say, yeah, this ice shouldn't have been here, and here's how I know that it shouldn't have been here. So there's a little bit of unfortunate nature of damages drive a lot of the answer to the question you're asking of, do I have a case? It's, well, are there injuries that support a case? After there are injuries that are worthy of pursuing a case, then you have to say, well, did the landowner do something wrong? There are people who get hurt, but it's nobody's fault. Sometimes bad things do just happen. But if the landowner did something, they didn't keep the property free and clear of snow and ice when they were supposed to, or they built something that fell apart and that led to someone getting injured, or they were obligated to inspect the property on a regular basis. The last time I think we talked about grocery stores, and it's like they have an obligation to regularly check their aisles to make sure that things haven't fallen. And so um, that's what you're looking at: is did the landowner do something that led to the person getting injured? And then we look at the other side of it of, did the person do something themselves to lead to their own injury? You have a caution sign that says, "Hey, our sidewalk is under construction. It's torn up. Please walk around." And someone is on their cell phone and ignores it and walks straight through, and lo and behold, they get injured. It's like, well, should the landowner have done something more? Probably not. It was the person's own fault for ignoring the signage and the warnings that said, "Don't walk here. It's damaged sidewalk." So you have to look at all the facts of, what did the landowner do, what did the injured person do, and were there injuries that make it so it's worth looking into the details and pursuing the case.
This is kind of crazy, but I'm going to use an example um, from myself. My next question is, how long do you have to file a claim on something like this? And the reason why I want to use an example for myself, I was at a friend's house and I was talking to a friend, and this dog came in and jumped me. It was a puppy, but it was a golden retriever. It was a big dog. And I fell really hard. It was on the ground and I fell really hard. I messed up my knee, which this happened in Florida. So I had to fly back to Colorado. I did all this physical therapy stuff, whatever. And I thought I was fine. A couple years later, when I fell, I hit my tailbone, but I didn't know it. And I didn't know it because my knee hurt so bad. But I didn't know it until I had aggravated that, and I went to a physical therapist. I didn't even know what it was, and he's like, and he goes, did you fall? And I go, yeah, when I was taking my son to college, I fell. It was the craziest thing, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, so I've had recurring issues from that. So I'm wondering, like, when you're in a situation like that, like, how long do you file a claim? And no, I'm not filing a claim. I'm just saying, that's how it happens. Sometimes you don't know you're hurt, like, right away.
So, how long do you have will be very state specific. Every state has a different statute of limitations. The statute of limitations is what you're looking at, though. That's the general answer to the question. Um, to give you an idea, at least I'm told Tennessee is one of the worst states to be in, where if you're in Tennessee, you have a 1 year statute of limitations.
Wow.
And so what happens with that is most people, if they are injured from these situations, usually they're not even finished with their medical care before they have to make a decision of, do I have to file a lawsuit over this or not? And it's like you're in the middle of getting medical care. It's a very difficult decision to make. Colorado is a little better. Colorado is you're typically in 2 year statute of limitation range, but at least in Colorado, there are some caveats. For instance, who owns the land? If it is a governmental entity and a state governmental entity for Colorado, you have 6 months to file. It's a Colorado governmental immunity notice requirement where to get through governmental immunity, because the government generally gives itself a sheath of immunity to protect itself from claims, even if they are completely justified claims, legitimate claims. Nope, immunity protects the government. So it's one of these things that, in order to get through the governmental immunity, you have to give them notice of a claim within 6 months, at least in Colorado. Um, a There's a Federal Tort Claims Act as well that creates some issues. And so if it's a federal governmental entity, you have to meet the Federal Tort Claims Act. So who owns the land very much changes the answer to the question.
Ooh, that's good to know because no one knows about that governmental immunity clause.
Yeah, it's something that I personally don't think immunity clauses should be constitutionally allowed. It's like the entire legal system is founded on the premise that lawsuits correct bad action and bad behavior. If someone is acting reasonably, you won't have a successful lawsuit against them because they acted reasonably. And
Right.
so the government says, well, we can act as bad as we want. Who cares? We have immunity. Like, no, the government should be held to the same standard of, did they act reasonably? And if they acted reasonably, you shouldn't have a successful claim. But instead, no one gets to know that because there's just a sheath of immunity that makes it so you don't have a claim, even if there was a legitimate thing the government did that should have been done differently.
So many comments we could make on that, but that's not what we're going to talk about today.
That's true. That's a sidetrack.
Awesome. Well, from this, really, to protect yourself, for a person to protect themselves, they really should go and meet with an attorney sooner rather than later
Yes.
because, you don't know what you don't know. And you give free consultations. So if somebody gets hurt, please reach out. What's the best way to reach out to you?
Best way to reach out, phone number 719-473-3040 or the website injuryevaluation.com. And just to, I guess, emphasize another point on why it's important to call sooner rather than later. There are often times where an entity that you thought was responsible is not actually the responsible entity.
Mm.
And especially with premise liability cases, if you wait to talk to an attorney might say, hey, you've waited too long, my hands are now tied. Yeah, you've contacted me before the statute of limitations, but I sometimes need 6 to 9 months just to investigate to try to find the right entities. And so if someone calls me, a month before the 2 year mark, I usually can't help them. It's usually too late.
Interesting. I know there's a lot of layers
Yep.
to this. Awesome. All right. And next time we're going to continue on this series because there's a lot of good information that you don't know. So thank you for your time, and I'll see you next time.
See you next time.